What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Monte Poker vlog. I know it has been quite some time since we have uploaded anything, far too much time, but we're back, we're here. We are going to be getting you guys some regular content once again. For those of you that are interested, I will give you an update at the end of the video. But for now, let's break the hiatus and jump into some hands. Back at Outlaws as per usual, playing the best 1-3 game in America. And to sweeten up the deal, it is the Monte game hosted every single Thursday. We're only 300 deep. This is a match to stack game, and there's blood in the water. These sharks want action, they want stack depth. So we're starting with a $100 PLO flip. 7 players involved, so we got $700 in the middle. Dealers giving everybody 4 cards. We like to keep them all face down for some extra drama and then go around the table flipping one at a time. The full board is ran out. There will be no additional betting. Let's see who takes this down.
Pair sixes. Pair sixes. Gold. Sixes are good. Good card. Pair tens. Pair tens. Pair tens. With the heart.
2-5. I do like the heart. Queen. Hold on.
Ryan's excited.
Oh, he's got 10s.
Oh, yeah. But you can do me.
I got to worry about him. No, you can't keep going. Hold on. I'm here.
I thought he was going to
10s is good. No, leave these here. We got a side.
Yeah, we got a side pot.
Oh, okay.
They got a side pot.
You want to buy on now?
No.
Kings.
A lot of hearts left.
A lot of hearts left.
Alright, I'm going to kill both of you. Wow.
Aces
is in the lead. Aces is in the lead.
Oh, there's a heart. There's a heart. Oh, baby. That's going to be hard to beat.
That's the nuts.
There you go.
Well, that definitely worked out in our favor. We only flipped over 2 cards and we have the nuts, so nobody else can make a better hand here. Absolutely sick way to start the night. Let's get into the next hand. About an hour and a half or so goes by and we don't really pick up too many hands of interest. Our stack gets whittled down from $800 down to $500, but still plenty of wiggle room here. After missing a couple flops with some premiums and being card dead for about an hour, some questionable hands start looking pretty decent. Like, let's say King 5 suited, for example. There's a $15 button straddle. Player behind me limps. I decide to limp, and then another 3 additional players limp. When the action gets back to the button, he decides to check his options. So we're going 6 ways to this flop. Really hoping to either flop 2 pair here or some sort of combo draw. $90 in the middle, and we get a board run out of 3 ace deuce with 2 diamonds. And I guess this isn't terrible. We have a gut shot straight draw and the nut backdoor flush draw, question mark. Action checks over to the button and he fires here for $60. The small blind doesn't take too much time before calling the $60, and then the action is over on me. I decide to get sticky here, really hoping that we see either a 4 or a heart on the turn. We're going 3 ways to the turn, $270 in the middle, and we get the most perfect card in the deck, my friends. It is the 4 of hearts. We make a straight. It's not the nut straight, but a straight is still fairly decent, and we have the nut flush draw on top of it. The small blind really seems to like this card because he now takes the lead for $75. I'm definitely going to put in a raise, but the question is how much. I'm pretty short stacked, all things considered, so if I min raise here to about 150, then I get called by one or both players. Our river bet is going to be $300 into a pot of anywhere between like 700 to 1,000 more or less, which makes absolutely no sense. So I think the most logical choice here would be to just jam for all of it and hope we get called by at least one player. And then I get this really wild thought. If we just min click it here and either Shelby or Gary have a really strong hand, they might come over the top to get the other person out of the way. It's a limp pot, so it's very possible that either player has a 2 pair here or some sort of pair plus straight draw or pair plus flush draw. So with that in mind, I decide to make an absolutely stupid play here and I raise it up to $160. Action gets back over to the button on Mr. Shelby and he thinks this over for a little bit. I'm getting a vibe that he might be having some devious intentions, so we're really praying that he comes over the top here, but unfortunately he does not. But our boy Gary does not disappoint. He says all in almost instantly after Shelby puts the chips in the middle. Love to see it. I put the chips in almost as quickly as Gary does. We're never folding here. And then to my surprise, Shelby sits up in his chair, leans over and asks how much I have.
Oh,
Less than that. A lot less than that.
I don't think Shelby's Hollywooding or trying to be funny here. I think he sincerely has a pretty monster draw and is trying to figure out how much money is in the pot to see if he's getting a decent price to call here. Gary just shoved for about 27 or 2,800. Shelby has him covered, so it's a pretty big decision. Very understandable for him to ask for a count here, but unfortunately with how short we are, I don't think we are giving him the right odds to call. So eventually my boy does fold. Gary asks to go twice. I'm always happy to oblige. He flips over his hand and shows that he has top 2 pair with the nut diamond draw. I flip over my hand and we have our straight with the nut heart draw. First river comes out great for us. It is the 6 of spades, so we secure $664 after this $1,300 pot. And the river is also good for us. It is the 10 of spades, so we win the whole thing. Alrighty, moving on to the next one. For this hand, we are on the big blind with about 1650 in our stack. We see an open $250 from the hijack. The button calls the $50 and then the action gets over to yours truly. I look down at pocket jacks, absolute premium, but you know what isn't premium? Flat calling a $50 pre-flop bet out of position with pocket jacks. Not really sure what I was thinking here on this day. I guess I was trying to be a little bit trappy, but versus 2 action heavy players that don't mind getting chips in the middle, I think we should just be raising our strong hands all the time. Anyhow, going to this flop 3 ways, 151 in the middle, and the board comes out 7-5 queen with 2 clubs. I check since there's a queen on the board. Hijack continues for 50, the button folds, and as I mentioned earlier, this particular individual likes to play a really wide range. He could be betting a 7, a 5, a queen, or a flush draw here. And we're ahead of a good amount of those. So I go ahead and put in the call. 251 in the middle as we go to this turn, which comes an 8 of hearts. Really would have preferred to see an offsuit deuce. This 8 is not great. Hands like 4-6 just improved to a straight, and a hand like 7-8 improved to 2 pair. Although we are still ahead of a single 7 or a single 5 and a flush draw, I check and the hijack continues for 50 once again. In my eyes, if he had actually improved to a straight or a 2 pair here, I think he would have sized up a little bit. It really feels like our opponent has a very marginal value hand and is trying to get to the showdown relatively cheap. We're also just getting an absolutely wonderful price to call here, so we do end up putting the call one more time. 351 in the pot, and the river is a 5 of hearts. I check once more, and now our opponent decides to size up to $125. Gary. Do you really have a 5 here, my man? Feel like if he would have river trips, he would probably choose a slightly bigger size. This seems relatively small compared to the size of the pot. So I honestly don't think it's a 5. Which means it's between a 7 and a queen. We don't think it over for too long before putting in the call and are very happy to hear our opponent announce that he has 7-8. Wow, was not expecting that. We had him on the flop and he was trying to take us to value town on the turn, but the river had other plans. Very lucky hand. All right, at this point in the night, it was time for one of the raid bosses to get up and go, Mr. B. Ryan, and as per usual, he offered a PLO flip to the table before he got up. He will typically flip for anything in his stack, including all of it. Really depends on what you want to flip for. I don't mind flipping at the start of the sessions for $100 to get the stack depth up, but I've been trying to get away from these types of flips. Ryan looked over in my direction as he asked the question, which is freaking hilarious, but you know, I always appreciate the action. Said I was good. and I've been trying not to flip. And before he got up, he said he would put up 500 to my 375. And at that point, with the math being in our favor, it's hard to say no. So here we are flipping once again. Let's roll the clip.
Double or nothing? Yeah. Double or nothing?
What, like this?
Sure.
Okay, I'm free rolling it. Fuck it. Last one. Either way, though.
Minus the drop.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Brandon 600 all night.
Eight's pretty good. Eight's pretty good. 7. Queen 7.
Oh, one straight.
Got it. Woohoo, baby, let's go.
Yeah.
Nice. No, I said the second one was the last. I said the second one was the last one.
Well, we ended up getting super lucky 2 times in a row, guys. After winning the first flip and Ryan wanted to go again for double or nothing, considering he had given us such a good price on the first flip, I said, all right, let's go ahead and do it. But I made sure to state that it was going to be the last one, win or lose. Pretty fun, and we got fortunate this time. Now we have an absolutely monster stack to continue playing with. Alrighty, ladies and gents, for this next one, we are in the small blind with 29.50 in our stack. There are 2 remaining knit buttons, me and the under the gun player, so I am not surprised when I see under the gun open to $20. The hijack puts in the call and the action gets back over to me. It is still within our interest to put in a call here, even with a hand like Jack 8 offsuit. In our version of the knit game, we play a $100 splash pot paid by the loser of the game as the knit tax. Absolutely great for action, but it does put you into some sticky situations. Going to this flop 3 ways with $63 in the middle, and we get a pretty good board for our hand. It comes out for Jack 6 rainbow. We have top pair with a marginal kicker. Action's on me, and I decide to lead here for $50. Almost a full pot size bet. I'm really trying to make it look like we want to just buy this pot and avoid paying the net tax. Very happy to see under the gun put in the call and the hijack get out of the way. Hoping he called us with a non-believing ace high or some sort of pocket pair that isn't beating our pair of jacks. 163 in the middle, and the turn comes a 10 of hearts. Doesn't really change too much. And at this point, I try to feign some weakness here and check it over to our opponent to entice him to bluff with some ace highs. And it looks like our opponent takes the bait here. He fires out for $75. I very quickly put in the call. 313 in the middle, and the river comes a 2 of hearts. 3-5 gets there, but anything outside of that is of no concern. I check it over to our opponent once more, fully expecting him to fire out once again, just because the knit game is on and we are the only 2 remaining in the hand. And fire he does for $150. If this were a normal hand, I would not expect our jack with an 8 kicker to be good here, but in a knit v knit situation, there's no way I'm ever folding top pair unless it was for some absurd amount, and half pot is not enough for us to fold top pair here. We put in the call, and unfortunately we get the bad news. Our opponent had pocket 4s and drilled a set on the flop on us. Rather tragic for us, but the absolute dream scenario for our opponent. Good hand to you, sir. Moving on to the next one. This next hand is a pretty cool one. We're in the small blind and we see an under the gun open to $20. Then the low jack, Mr. Shelby, decides to bump up the price of poker to $75. Action gets over to us, and I look down at the beautiful King Jack suited, calling a $75 bet with King Jack suited at a typical 1-3 game might be a bit wide and reckless. But in this particular game, as you guys have seen, the open sizes can be quite large. Not to mention, I'm sitting here 2,700 deep. Shelby's probably got somewhere around 1,300, and it looks like under the gun has just shy of $2,000 in his stack. So if he comes along for the ride, this might be a big pot. So for those reasons, even though we are out of position, I do decide to call with our hand, and I'm happy to see that under the gun comes along as well. 228 in the middle, and we get a pretty Pretty phenomenal flop for our hand. It is 10-8-7 with 2 clubs. We flopped a second nut flush draw and a gut shot straight draw, so any club or any 9 would give us a pretty strong hand. I contemplate leading for a moment, but ultimately decide to check instead to see what Shelby's going to do as the pre-flop aggressor. Under the gun checks as well, and when the action gets over to Shelby, it doesn't take him very long before putting out a $200 bet. So a couple things here. First thought that crossed my mind was going for a nice juicy check raise. But before we decide if we're going to do that, we need to figure out what Shelby is likely to have here. Given the pre-flop action, he's going to have a lot of overpairs on this board. Aces, kings, queens, jacks, maybe even top set with pocket 10s. Although we are blocking a couple of those combos. He could also have ace 10 suited. But there's one other crucial piece of information in this hand. 3 of the 4 remaining nip buttons are currently involved in this hand. So it wouldn't be completely out of the question for Shelby to have absolutely nothing here and be just using the pre-flop aggression to c-bet after both opponents checked it over to him. Given how big this pot is and the fact that the nip button tax is only $100, it seems more likely that Shelby would have a hand, but we can't completely discredit that this could be a complete bluff to get rid of the nip button. I also considered what Shelby would do if we did check raise in this spot, and if he had an overpair, there's a good chance he might just come over the top with an all-in, and at that point we can't fold out our hand for an additional $600 or $700, whatever he would have had left behind at that point. So to avoid flipping for $1,300, I decided to just put the call in instead. If Shelby is bluffing, he'll most likely slow down after I call here, and if he's not, well, we still have a chance to make our hand. Under the gun puts in the call as well, so we are still 3 ways going to this turn, which comes the innocuous deuce of diamonds. 828 in the middle. The action goes check, check, and then we see the worst possible scenario. Shelby decides to stuff it in the middle for a little over a grand. So time to do some quick poker math. Pot's about 1893. We're gonna have to call 1065, bringing the pot total to 2958, which means we're getting about 36 pot odds. Now we have to put that against our hand equity versus the hands we think Shelby has. So if Shelby has a hand like pocket aces without a club in the hand, we are about 27% to 72% against a hand like ace 10 suited. Obviously the 10 of clubs is out there, so he can't have ace 10 of clubs. Let's just say he has a hand like ace 10 of spades. We are about 40% to his 59. So in the event that he has an overpair, we are not getting the right odds to make the call, but if he has a hand like ace 10, we actually are getting the right price to make the call. I go back and forth over the scenario, trying to debate whether or not he would make this move with a hand like ace 10 or an overpair, and I was leaning towards an overpair. So after thinking it over for quite some time, I end up making a fold here. The big blind folds as well, and luckily me and Shelby discussed this hand the following week, and he let me know that he actually had queen 10 of diamonds, which our exact holding to his holding was 34% to 65%, which honestly is only 2% off, so maybe worth a call in that particular situation. At this point, I was kicking myself for not taking the aggressive route and check raising flop, but if Shelby did end up finding the call, there was no way either of us were folding this turn, and who knows what would have happened on the river. Till the next one, my friend. Nice hand. So about 3 hours go by and we don't really see too many more hands of interest. It's almost a $50 minimum to see a flop with any 2 cards. So our stack gets beat up quite a bit. We get chunked down to around 2250. For this hand, we are on the big blind and we see an open to $15 by the low jack. Action folds over to me and we look at the best hand in poker, pocket aces. And to make things even better, we are playing this hand heads up versus the only other player with a nip button. So we can go pretty big here and it's going to look like absolute BS to our opponent. So that's exactly what we do. I make it $80 to go and our opponent quickly puts in the call. 161 in the middle, and we go to this flop, which comes out 9 queen 8 with 2 spades. This is a very wet board, so I think it would be a mistake to check this over over to our opponent and potentially risk him checking it back. So I decide to continue here with a bet of $100. Our opponent takes no time whatsoever and puts in the call. 361 now in the middle, and we go to the turn, which comes the King of Hearts. Not really too worried about this particular card. If our opponent had a hand like King Queen, I would have expected him to raise a little bigger than 15 pre-flop. It also does not complete any of the available straight draws that were on the flop. So overall, a safe card for us to continue betting on. Now the question is how much? I'd like to bet an amount that's going to get a call out of a queen, even with a king on the board, or potentially a non-believing 9 with a hand like ace 9 suited, which would typically be a fold on this board, but with the nit game in effect, it is possible that we could get value from a 9, and obviously a draw is going to call a reasonable size bet. So I decide to continue here for $150. Very happy to see that our opponent quickly puts in the call, which means I probably could have gone a bit bigger, maybe closer to 200 or 225, but oh well. 661 in the middle, and we go to a river, which comes in 8 of hearts. Once again, not too worried about this card. Didn't complete any of the draws, and getting called down to streets with bottom pair, while possible, I don't think is going to happen when there's a queen and a king on the board, unless we have some very serious credibility issues. So at this point, we're not going to get any value out of the draws that missed. So I'm strictly going to target the single pair holdings, and I go with about a half pot size bet of 350. Our opponent quickly folds and would later mention that he was on the flush draw. So no more money to be had for us here, but still a pretty good size pot overall. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the last hand of interest of the night. Got about 2450 more or less in our stack, and we are on the big blind. We see an under the gun open to $50. Cutoff calls the $50. Action gets over to the small blind, and he thinks it over for a little bit, but inevitably puts in the call. And with a suited ace here, specifically one that can make a flush or a straight, closing the action, I definitely think it's worth the call here. We also have our net button, so obviously we got to get rid of this bad boy. $200 in the middle, and we go to a flop that comes out 5-4 deuce rainbow. Overall, a pretty solid flop for our hand. We have a pair plus a gut shot to the straight, and I don't expect this to hit our opponent's range a lot of the time. So for that reason, I do decide to take the betting lead here, and I fire out for $100. And to my surprise, the under the gun +1 player puts in the call pretty quickly, which is a bit concerning since he has 2 players left behind him to act. Cutoff gets out of the way, and then the small blind goes into the tank. Not really sure what he's thinking over. If he had any suited connectors containing a 3, it's a pretty clear-cut call. If he has a hand similar to mine that has a pair plus a gut shot and maybe even a backdoor flush draw, I think that's a pretty clear-cut call. But who knows? Hopefully we get to find out, because the small blind does put in the call. $500 in the middle now as we go to this turn, which comes not a great card for us. It is the 10 of hearts. Can't really say I'm surprised though, as there are only a handful of cards that would be good for us. The small blind checks over to me, and as much as I would love to bet here, don't think that's a good idea after getting called in 2 spots, especially considering under the gun +1 is a bit on the tighter side. So I check it over to him, and he fires for $300. Yikes. This, ladies and gentlemen, does not feel like a bluff. Not to say that the individual isn't capable, but he put in about half of his stack already, and this just feels like a value/protection bet. Given the pre-flop action and his snap call on the flop, I figured he had an overpair to the 5s, but now seeing as he fired $300 onto a 10 high board, I take it he can beat the 10 as well. Small blind is tanking like no other, so we have the opportunity to do some math here. The pot is currently 800, which means we have to call 300 to make 1100, giving us 28% pot odds with what I assume is 10 clean outs, any ace, any 4, or any 3, versus an overpair we have about 20% hand equity, which means we are not getting the odds to call. But if the small blind somehow finds the call here, that would bring the pot odds to 21%, which would be worth it. So my decision's already made up. If he calls, I call. And after much deliberating, the small blind does decide to fold, so I decide to let this hand go. And luckily, because of the net game, we are going to get to see it this time. time, and our opponent flips over pocket jacks. It sucks to lose a pot, but there's no better feeling than trusting your gut and seeing that you were correct and making a good laydown. Probably would have tilted off the planet if our opponent had just shown us ace high in this spot. And after that, there were no more hands of interest. We played for another 20 minutes or so just to get rid of our nip button. And with that, it was time to wrap the session up. This time around, we have a very easy breakdown for you guys. We were in for $300 and that was it, ladies and gentlemen. No rebuys, no add-ons. Got very fortunate winning that flip at the start of the session and then winning 2 flips versus Brian. We ended up closing the session out at $2,050. Not a bad day if I do say so myself. And for those of you that are interested, I have a quick life update and the remainder of the outro. For those that aren't interested, we will catch you on the next one. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here, for making it this far into the video. May adjust that slightly. I am so excited to be here again. So excited to be putting up content. Cannot tell you how many times I wanted to be here in front of this camera for y'all, but had to take a hiatus. Long story short, without getting into too much of the nitty gritty, I was very burnt out. I had everything compounding on top of itself. Life was just getting too difficult. Work was hard. The vlog was becoming a draining experience. Financially, I was struggling, had the issue with the car. You guys saw, the car crash. Had some medical bills stacked on top of that. Had some things change at home that also made it more difficult, financial wise. As far as the medical stuff, I needed treatment for a couple of months. I had gained a bunch of weight because I wasn't doing anything. The working in a chair, playing poker in a chair, editing in a chair. Like I literally was just sitting on my butt all day, which is not good for you. I was eating very terribly, so gained too much weight. And I was having issues with my personal relationships. People that I cared about a lot was just completely neglecting. Bit of a workaholic, got hyper fixated on this vlog. Even before that, I would always say I was always working on side projects and prioritizing work over my relationships with the people that were important to me and in my life. So it all just kind of compounded on top of itself and got to a point where I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit the vlog. I wanted to quit playing poker. I'm sure you guys saw me deteriorating near the end of it where I was constantly like, man, I need to get my head on straight. I need to not tilt. I needed this. I needed that. I was kind of straying away from the original poker play style that we started the channel with. And was just kind of in this weird, really messed up headspace on a regular basis to the point where like even going to play sometimes was a bit difficult, where I felt like I was showing up for the sake of showing up because it's what I did every week, not because it was something that I wanted to do. And I've never wanted poker to be that, and I never wanted the vlog to be that. I started it because I loved it. I loved the game. I was passionate about it. I enjoyed making content, and near the end of it there, I wasn't enjoying it anymore. So we took a step back, fixed our sleep. I've lost 30 pounds. You can probably see it in my face a little bit. I've definitely noticed it in the mirror. Eating a lot better, going to the gym frequently. I was, working on mending some of those relationships I mentioned earlier and trying to prioritize the people that are important in my life. I prioritized that stuff over working on things and just getting my home up to date and taking care of all the stuff that I had not been doing for the 2 years I was doing the vlog. Literally, like there were some small home projects that would take a weekend that when I moved in, I'm like, I'm going to do this. And 2 years later, still not done. It was just a lot. It was just a lot. I'm rambling a little bit now, but we pumped the brakes. We got a lot of stuff addressed. Things are significantly better, and I am very rusty. We played a couple times during the hiatus, but not very much. And my boys, my girls, everybody watching, I'm scared. I'm a little scared to get back into it, but also very excited because I love the game, and you know, it's like riding a bike. We'll probably get right into it. Moving forward, there are going to be some slight shifts. We were trying to do 4 videos or a video a week and multiple shorts a week. Highly doubt we're going to be able to keep up that frequency. I think even some of the top creators in this space aren't putting out 35 to 40 minute vlogs every single week with 2 shorts on top of it. There might be some, but I mean, they do it full time and have either a full-time editor and marketing team or marketing person, whatever you may call it. But I think that's just a bit unrealistic for us at the point that we're at. So I'm going to scale it back. Right now, the editor and I have agreed to do 2 vlogs a month with 8 shorts. I might scale that up a little bit if I can get ahead of the work and get them to help out and give you guys some bonus content. But for now, expect the vlog every 2 weeks and shorts in between. Up until we get more stable, I don't want to risk, you know, overdoing things and burning out again. So that is going to be the pace that we are shooting for at the time. We're going to keep the vlogs a bit shorter too. I think I'm going to do about 10 hands of vlog maximum, as opposed to before I was doing anywhere between, I mean, usually it was about 17, 18, sometimes more, which is just a ton of work. Sorry guys, I like long vlogs. I can sit through 30, 40 minute long vlogs. So I would like to, you know, put out videos similar to what I enjoy and I like, but realistically, that's just not going to happen right now. It is what it is, but that will give me the opportunity to give you guys better quality hands, right? I have to now be more selective. I'm really going to try to keep it to the hands that are very interesting. Instead of doing a full session breakdown, you know, there might be some videos that have multiple sessions in one. I'm going to set some new goals for myself and bankroll challenges and all these other things later down the road. But right now I have a very good backlog of footage. So I'm going to just get the best hands that I can find out of the footage that I have and just pump out a couple videos for you guys, try to get the YouTube algorithm all happy and whatnot. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, that's the game plan moving forward. Thank you for your time. Sorry, I rambled on longer than I really wanted to. It keeps happening over and over again. I've shot this video like 6 times and the first one was like 14 minutes long. Now we're at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So for this outro clip, still too long, but whatever. Maybe the algorithm will like it more because it's a long video and you guys get a longer video. Less poker, but long video. Yay. Cool. We happy? Man. I am not used to being on camera. Well, cut you loose, guys. Thank you if you made it this far. Once again, I appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And I will see you in 2 weeks. Good luck on the felt. Take care. Love you all. Peace.